Beneath the blazing sun of ancient Egypt, where the Nile's life-giving waters carved a path through golden sands, a land of gods and mortals thrived. It was a time of grandeur and mystery, where pharaohs ruled with divine authority, and the whispers of magic lingered in the air like the scent of incense. But amidst the splendor of Thebes, the heart of this ancient kingdom, shadows stirred, shadows born of curses, the forgotten gods, and the unyielding will of those who dared to defy fate. In the slums of Thebes, where the grandeur of the temples gave way to crumbling homes and desperate lives, a young warrior named Nadia walked a path of isolation and inner turmoil. Orphaned and alone, he bore a strange, glowing mark on his wrist, the mark that pulsed with an otherworldly energy, growing warmer whenever he neared the Nile. It was a mark that tied him to a destiny he could not understand, a destiny that would soon unravel the fragile threads of his existence. Nadia had no memory of his parents. He had been raised by the streets, surviving on scraps and the occasional kindness of strangers. But there was one thing that set him apart, a strange, glowing mark on his wrist. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat, and grew warmer whenever he ventured near the Nile. The river seemed to call to him, its whispers echoing in his dreams, but he could never decipher their meaning. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, Nadia found himself drawn to the riverbank. The mark on his wrist burned brighter than ever, and a strange energy coursed through his veins. It was there, amidst the reeds and the lapping waves, that he encountered Asima. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. Her ebony hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall of night, and her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. She wore robes of deep crimson, adorned with golden symbols that seemed to shift and writhe as if alive. When she spoke, her voice was both soothing and commanding, like the rumble of distant thunder. "Nadia," she said, her gaze piercing through him. "You have been chosen." Nadia's heart raced. Chosen? By whom? By the gods of death, Asima replied, her lips curling into a faint smile. "You are the last descendant of a cursed bloodline, a lineage bound to the shadows. The mark on your wrist is no mere scar, it is a key to power beyond your imagination." Nadia's mind reeled. He had always felt different, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice trembling. Asima stepped closer, her presence both intoxicating and terrifying. "I offer you a choice, Nadia. Embrace your destiny, and I will unlock the power within you. You will become more than a warrior, you will become a force of nature. But know this, the price of such power is steep. Once you accept, there is no turning back." Nadia hesitated. He had spent his life searching for answers, for a purpose. And now, here it was, standing before him. The allure of power was irresistible, but something in Asima's eyes gave him pause. Still, the thought of remaining in the shadows, forgotten and powerless, was unbearable. "I accept," he said, his voice firm. Asima's smile widened. "Then let us begin." Asima led Nadia to a secluded grove, where the air was thick with the scent of incense and the hum of ancient magic. She drew a circle in the sand, inscribing it with symbols that glowed with an eerie light. At its center she placed a dagger forged from obsidian, its blade etched with runes that seemed to writhe like serpents. "Kneel," she commanded, and Nadia obeyed. Asima began to chant, her voice rising and falling in a rhythm that seemed to resonate with the very earth. The air grew heavy, and the ground beneath Nadia trembled. He felt a sharp pain in his wrist as the mark began to glow brighter, its light spreading through his veins like liquid fire. The pain was excruciating, but Nadia clenched his teeth, refusing to cry out. He could feel the magic coursing through him, reshaping him, binding him to Asima's will. His senses sharpened, his strength multiplied, and his mind expanded, as if he could see the threads of fate weaving around him. When the ritual ended, Nadia collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. He felt different. Powerful. But also hollow, as if a part of him had been taken. Asima knelt beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder. You are mine now, Nadia. Your soul is bound to my will. But do not fear, this is only the beginning. Asima's first command came sooner than Nadia expected. She tasked him with assassinating a wealthy merchant who had crossed her. The man was said to be corrupt, hoarding wealth while the people of Thebes starved. But as Nadia approached the merchant's home, he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The mission was swift and brutal. Nadia's newfound power made it easy to slip past the guards and into the merchant's chambers. The man begged for his life, his eyes wide with terror, but Nadia's hand moved as if guided by an unseen force. The dagger plunged into the merchant's heart, and his lifeblood spilled onto the floor. As Nadia fled the scene, he was haunted by the memory of the merchant's wife and child who had burst into the room moments too late. Their screams echoed in his mind, the reminder of the cost of his power. Nadia struggles with his morality, but the magic forces him to obey. After killing the merchant, he is filled with guilt and sorrow, realizing that he is now a puppet under Asima's control. Nadia's first kill weighs heavily on his conscience. He is haunted by the memory of the merchant's wife and child who had begged for their loved one's life. In a fit of anger and confusion, he seeks solace in the streets of Thebes, but his inner turmoil only grows. As Asima continues to send him on more deadly missions, Nadia begins to question the nature of the curse and whether he can ever break free from her influence. While carrying out his latest mission, Nadia crosses paths with Zara, a noblewoman who is investigating the murders in Thebes. She senses something different about him, the mix of darkness and vulnerability. Nadia, caught off guard by her kindness, begins to feel a connection with her. Zara refuses to believe the rumors surrounding Nadia and sees beyond the killer persona, recognizing that he is tormented by forces beyond his control. Nadia's feelings for Zara grow stronger with each encounter, but so do his fears. Asima notices Nadia's shifting emotions and becomes suspicious. She warns him to stay focused, threatening to unleash the full force of her magic if he falters. Meanwhile, Nadia begins to uncover clues about Asima's true intentions. He learns that she is a member of a forgotten cult that worships a dark god of death, and she intends to use Nadia as the vessel to bring the god back to life. As Nadia delves deeper into Asima's past, he learns that his own bloodline is tied to this dark cult. His ancestors had been chosen to serve as sacrifices, channeling death itself. Nadia realizes that the mark on his wrist is not just a symbol of power, but a key that could unlock the dark god's return. The more he uncovers, the more trapped he feels, realizing that his life has never been his own. Despite the weight of the curse, Nadia finds brief moments of peace with Zara, who helps him explore the idea of redemption. He begins to entertain the notion of a life without Asima's control, but the magic that binds him to the magician is stronger than he imagined. When he attempts to refuse an assignment, the mark on his wrist flares up violently, forcing him into submission. Nadia's next target is a high-ranking priest in Thebes who has spoken out against Asima's cult. As he approaches the priest's home, Nadia hesitates, the pain of his past actions gnawing at him. He sees an innocent child playing nearby and is reminded of the family he destroyed. Unable to bring himself to kill the priest, Nadia flees, realizing that he cannot continue this path. Asima discovers Nadia's disobedience and punishes him. The magician's magic is ruthless, and Nadia suffers immense physical pain as Asima reasserts her control over him. In a desperate bid for freedom, Nadia confronts Asima directly, but she mocks his efforts, revealing that no one has ever escaped her grip. She tells him that his destiny is sealed and that he is nothing more than a pawn in her game. Nadia's bond with Zara grows deeper, and the two share a moment of intimacy that strengthens their resolve to escape the curse. Zara tells Nadia that there is still hope for him, that he can break free from Asima's control if he fights for it. Nadia begins to believe that love could be his salvation, but as the darkness inside him grows, he begins to wonder if he is truly capable of redemption. Nadia faces the hardest choice of his life when Asema orders him to kill Zara. Torn between his love for her and the control Asema exerts over him, Nadia must decide whether to betray the woman who has shown him kindness or to turn his back on the only life he has known. In a moment of sheer desperation, Nadia chooses to protect Zara, but in doing so, he risks his own life. Asema reacts with fury to Nadia's defiance, and in a fit of rage, she reveals the full extent of her plan. Nadia learns that Asema had always intended to use him as a vessel for the Dark God, and that she had orchestrated every event in his life to lead him to this moment. Betrayed and heartbroken, Nadia realizes that his entire existence has been manipulated. Nadia's anger reaches its peak, and he seeks out the dark temple where Asema plans to complete the ritual that will summon the god of death. As he journeys deeper into the heart of the desert, he confronts his own demons, questioning whether he is truly a hero or just another killer, destined to fall into darkness. As Nadia reaches the temple, he witnesses the full extent of Asema's power. The magician is preparing the ritual that will bring the dark god to life, using Nadia as the final ingredient. The air is thick with magic, and the very ground beneath his feet trembles with power. Nadia realizes that if he does not stop Asema now, the world will be plunged into darkness. Nadia confronts Asema in the temple, and a fierce battle ensues. The dark magic between them crackles in the air as Nadia fights to free himself from Asema's control. In the heat of battle, he finally breaks the spell that binds him to her, but Asema unleashes the full fury of her magic, causing the temple to collapse around them. The truth revealed with Asema defeated, Nadia learns the truth about his lineage. His ancestors were not merely sacrifices, but chosen guardians, tasked with keeping the dark god imprisoned. The curse that has plagued him for so long was never meant to control him, it was meant to protect the world from the god's return. Nadia realizes that he is not a pawn, but the last hope for humanity. Nadia returns to Thebes, now a man free from the chains of the past. But the people do not see him as a hero, they see him as a murderer. Nadia's newfound power had made him a target. Rumors of his involvement in the merchant's murder had spread like wildfire through Thebes, and the people were quick to turn against him. The villagers, were already living in fear of the recent killings, saw Nadia as a monster, a harbinger of death. They didn't know the truth about Asema or the curse that bound him. All they saw was a man with a glowing mark on his wrist, the man who had brought nothing but suffering. One evening, as Nadia sought refuge in a small village on the outskirts of Thebes, he was confronted by an angry mob. Torches flickered in the darkness, casting long shadows on the faces of the villagers. Their eyes burned with fear and hatred, and their voices rose in a cacophony of accusations. "Murderer," one man shouted, brandishing a pitchfork. "Demon," cried another, clutching a crude wooden club. "You've brought nothing but death to our homes. Leave, or we'll make you leave." Nadia raised his hands in a gesture of peace, his heart heavy with guilt. "I'm not your enemy," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within him. "I'm as much a victim as you are." But the villagers were beyond reason. Their fear had turned to rage, and they surged forward, weapons raised. Nadia knew he had no choice but to defend himself. The mark on his wrist flared to life, its glow intensifying as the magic within him stirred. Nadia's guilt consumed him. He wandered the streets of Thebes, his mind a whirlwind of regret and self-loathing. The mark on his wrist pulsed faintly, a constant reminder of his bondage. He tried to drown his sorrows in drink, but even the strongest wine couldn't numb the pain. It was during one of these aimless wanderings that he encountered Zara, a noble woman with a sharp mind and a kind heart. She was investigating the recent murders in Thebes, and something about Nadia caught her attention. "You're not like the others," she said, her gaze piercing. "I can see it in your eyes." There's more to you than meets the eye. Nadia was taken aback by her kindness. For the first time in years, he felt seen. But he also felt fear. Asima's warning echoed in his mind, "You are mine now." As Nadia's bond with Zara deepened, so did his resolve to uncover the truth about Asima and the curse that bound him. He began to piece together fragments of information, uncovering the existence of a forgotten cult that worshipped a dark god of death. Asima was its high priestess, and Nadia was the key to their ultimate goal, the resurrection of their god. The mark on his wrist was not just a symbol of power, it was a conduit, a vessel for the god's return. Nadia's ancestors had been chosen as sacrifices, their bloodline cast to serve the cult for eternity. Nadia's journey led him to a dark temple hidden deep within the desert. There, Asima awaited, her plans nearing completion. The air was thick with magic, and the ground trembled as the ritual began. Nadia fought with everything he had, his love for Zara fueling his determination. In a final, desperate act, he shattered the obsidian dagger, breaking the bond that tied him to Asima. The temple collapsed around them, burying the dark god's legacy in the sands. Nadia returned to Thebes, a changed man. Though the mark on his wrist remained, it no longer controlled him. He had found redemption not through power, but through love and sacrifice. As he stood by the Nile, watching the sunset, he felt a sense of peace. The battle between light and darkness was eternal, but Nadia knew he would never stop fighting. For himself, for Zara, and for the world he had saved. The first villager lunged at Nadia with a sickle, his movements clumsy but fueled by desperation. Nadia sidestepped the attack with ease, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to move like a shadow. He grabbed the man's wrist and twisted, disarming him without causing harm. "I don't want to hurt you," Nadia said, his voice pleading. "Please, just let me go." But the mob was relentless. Another villager swung a wooden plank at Nadia's head, forcing him to duck. The air crackled with tension as the villagers closed in, their numbers overwhelming. Nadia's heart raced. He didn't want to fight them, but he couldn't let them kill him either. The mark on his wrist burned hotter, and he felt the magic surge through him, begging to be unleashed. He clenched his fists, trying to resist, but the villagers gave him no choice. A spear grazed his shoulder, drawing blood, and the pain broke his resolve. Nadia's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light as the magic took hold. He raised his hands, and a wave of energy erupted from his body, knocking the villagers back like leaves in a storm. The ground trembled beneath his feet, and the air grew thick with the scent of ozone. The villagers stared in awe and terror as Nadia's power manifested. Flames danced around his fingertips, then shadows writhed at his feet, forming tendrils that lashed out at his attackers. One villager, braver than the rest, charged at Nadia with a roar, but Nadia flicked his wrist, sending a burst of wind that sent the man flying into a nearby haystack. "Stay back!" Nadia shouted, his voice echoing with an unnatural resonance. "I don't want to hurt you, but I will if I must." The villagers hesitated, their fear momentarily overriding their anger. But then a voice rose above the chaos, a voice filled with venom and hatred. "He's a monster. Kill him before he kills us all." The mob surged forward again, their fear replaced by a desperate determination. Nadia's heart ached as he realized there was no other way. He couldn't reason with them, and he couldn't run. He had to fight. Nadia's movements became a blur as he channeled his magic. He summoned a barrier of light to deflect a volley of arrows, then unleashed a shockwave that sent the villagers sprawling. But he was careful, too careful. He didn't want to kill them, only to incapacitate them. Every spell he cast was measured, every strike precise. The villagers, however, showed no such restraint. They fought with the ferocity of cornered animals, their weapons flashing in the firelight. One man managed to land a blow on Nadia's side, the blade slicing through his tunic and drawing blood. Nadia gritted his teeth, the pain fueling his resolve. He raised his hand, and the ground beneath the villagers erupted in a cascade of earth and stone, trapping them in a makeshift prison. "Please," he said, his voice trembling. "I don't want to hurt you. Just let me go." But the villagers refused to yield. They clawed at the earth, their eyes filled with hatred. Nadia felt a pang of sorrow as he realized the depth of their fear. He had become the very thing he despised, a monster in their eyes. As the dust settled, Nadia stood amidst the wreckage, his body trembling with exhaustion. The villagers were battered but alive, their anger replaced by a stunned silence. Nadia's heart ached as he looked at them, their faces etched with fear and betrayal. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I never wanted this." He turned and fled into the night, the mark on his wrist pulsing faintly. The fight had taken its toll, not just on his body, but on his soul. He had used his power to survive, but at what cost? The villagers' hatred was a reminder of the darkness within him, a darkness he feared would consume him. As he disappeared into the shadows, Nadia vowed to find a way to break free from Asima's control. He couldn't continue like this, torn between his humanity and the curse that bound him. The fight with the villagers was a turning point, a moment of clarity amidst the chaos. Nadia knew that his journey was far from over and that the true battle, the battle for his soul, was just beginning. The fight with the villagers marked a turning point in Nadia's journey. It was a stark reminder of the cost of his power and the darkness that lurked within him. As he fled into the night, the weight of his actions pressed heavily on his soul. The villagers' fear and hatred echoed in his mind, a haunting refrain that he couldn't escape. He had become the very thing he despised, a monster, a bringer of death. But deep down, Nadia knew that he was more than the curse that bound him. He was more than Asima's puppet. He was a man, flawed and broken, but still capable of redemption. Zara took his hand, her touch a comforting anchor. "What will you do now?" she asked. Nadia looked out at the horizon, where the first rays of dawn were breaking through the darkness. "I'll keep fighting," he said. "Not for power, not for vengeance, but for the people who still believe in me. For you. For myself." Nadia struggles to find peace within himself, haunted by the blood he has spilled. But as he works to rebuild his life, he begins to realize that true redemption does not come from the outside, it comes from within. Nadia and Zara are reunited, and together, they begin a new life far from the shadows of Thebes. Nadia, though scarred by his past, finds solace in the love they share. But he knows that his journey is not over, he must continue to fight for his soul and protect the world from the darkness that still lingers. Years passed, and Nadia became a guardian of Thebes, a protector of the people he had once feared. The mark on his wrist never fully disappeared, but it no longer controlled him. It was a reminder of his past, of the battles he had fought and the darkness he had overcome. Zara stood by his side, her love a constant source of strength. The curse of the magicians had been broken, but Nadia knew that the fight between light and darkness was eternal. He would never stop fighting, not just for himself, but for the world he had saved. And as he stood by the Nile, watching the sunset, he felt a sense of peace. Years later, Nadia becomes a guardian of Thebes, using his power to protect the city from those who would seek to use magic for evil. Though he is no longer controlled by Asima, the mark on his wrist remains, a reminder of his past. But now, it serves as a symbol of his strength, not his curse. He has become his own man, free from the darkness that once consumed him. But he knows that the battle between light and darkness is eternal. And as long as he lives, he will continue to fight to protect those he loves. Senses became sharper, his mind clearer. He could feel the pulse of the earth beneath him, the flow of the Nile in his veins. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the pain ceased. Nadia stood there, breathing heavily, his heart racing. He felt alive. Powerful. Invincible. "Welcome to your true self," Asema said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "You are no longer bound by your past. You are a weapon now, Nadia. And I will show you how to use it." But as the magic continued to settle within him, Nadia felt a deep unease. There was a cost to this power, a price that was not yet clear to him. Asema smiled as if she knew what he was thinking. "Don't worry, Nadia. There's no turning back now.